we're going to have a nice conversation. What I gave you a few minutes ago was just general, just to organize the discussion, but we're not doing a Q&A, question and answer on that. So actually, if I could start with the first item, the why. You know, clearly there were changes happening in New Brunswick over many decades, and then at some point, you know, the decision was made to we have to come forth and to try to revitalize the city. So if I can get some of your perceptions on that, in other words, what led to this motivation to form DEFCO, to form New Brunswick Tomorrow, and then after that general observation, you know, how did you become involved? So again, if we could just start with what were the forces that led to the creation of these entities to try to redevelop the city?
Well, I think the key development was Johnson & Johnson staying here in New Brunswick. I think that was the key. And of course, John was the leader in that. And there was Jim Burke and some others. Dick Sellers. Dick Sellers was sort of before. Have you talked with Dick Sellers?
We haven't. I'm hoping we can. He apparently hasn't been well.
No, I know, and of course he's up around the Cape. So,
yeah.
But you should, if you could,
if we could. Okay.
Speak with him.
He lives in Massachusetts?
Yes, I've been up to see him once or twice in the summertime.
Okay.
But I haven't been recently.
Okay.
But he's in his 90s, I think.
Right. Do you know how we would find him?
Oh, John, I have his number.
Okay.
John could certainly give it to you.
Okay.
But if you can't get it through John, I think I have it.
Okay.
Okay.
And since we started talking about J&J, what do you think motivated, I can think of some of the reasons, but what do you think motivated them to stay, especially as in that time many large corporations were leaving, you know, their urban headquarters?
Well, I just think they wanted to be part of, or really lead the revitalization. I don't, corporate reason, I don't think, I think that's it, revitalization, and I think the fact that they did stay brought about the revitalization.
And if maybe I should have started with this, but can you tell us a little bit about your background and your connection to the city? I know of a bunch of it, but I think it would be good if we heard from you. So maybe we should have started with that.
No, I have a memory problem, so I think probably I was on the board of I was on the board of the planning. What was it called?
New Brunswick Tomorrow.
New Brunswick Tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was important. I also think you know, that J&J, I mentioned before, J&J stayed in town.
Mm-hmm.
And I think probably my involvement with the museum was important, named after my mother. That was really, the first gift of that was from my brother. And let's see if I can think of some other, but I think J&J, Rutgers.
Theological.
What?
Seminary.
Seminary.
Theological.
Yeah, well that, of course, that's very much changed now, the seminary. I was up there the other day, and it used to be a Reformed church seminary. That's how Rutgers started. But now they have many students that come on Thursday and Saturday, and they have a great leader. And have you talked to them?
No. We've just started it.
Oh, you're just starting. So
you're our number 3.
So were you on the board of the seminary
Yeah.
back during the revitalization?
Yeah, I was.
Okay.
Right. And my son Alan will be going on the board.
Oh, okay.
As soon as he's involved with his church.
Right.
And but he'll go on the board, and I think this leader they have there, well, what's his name, Greg?
Greg.
Greg is really a good person. I didn't vote for him.
But he may not know much about the revitalization of New Brunswick. I don't remember who was the president during that time, but that would be another source, I think, to look
Well,
at.
Greg, I'm not sure. Greg would, he'd be a person to talk
Okay.
about that. And he's really I said,
Right.
I didn't vote for him.
Yeah.
I can't remember who I voted for. But I was glad I was outvoted, because he's done a good job.
Ralph, could you explain a little bit about the museum and how your work with the museum was part of what you saw as part of the importance to New Brunswick?
Well, it's sort of off in a corner, and when I was growing up, that was the Rutgers gym, that building.
Right.
And I was able to get my brother involved, and he took an interest in it, and gave quite a bit of money. And then, of course, Norton Dodge has come along and given an awful lot of money and a lot of work to the museum. And so I think the museum has quite a reputation around the country.
And was the museum viewed as a specific action to help revitalize the city, or is it more?
No, I don't.
It was good for Rutgers to have it.
I think it was probably selfish on my part, how Alan and I could honor our mother. My dad died when I was 3, and she was just a wonderful person. And then she, about 6 or 7 years later, married Dad Zimmerli. It was just, I think we wanted to honor her for being able to bring the family up, and because I was 3, and my memory's not too good, so I'm repeating myself.
We're getting a good sense.
All right. And I just had a wonderful mother, and that's why we named the museum. He had the money at the time.
Alan did.
Alan did. It's A-L-A-N. It's A-L-A-N.
Right, the same Alan that our transportation center is named.
Yeah, right.
And how was Rutgers involved, and was J&J? I'm speaking now about the museum now.
No, I'm right. Well, I don't know at the beginning how much Rutgers. Who was the director?
Dennis Kay.
Dennis Kay. He was really very important at that time, and he was the one that what they did. They had Alan go see people at Douglas, and what's the building? The office building, the old dormitory.
At Douglas?
No, at Rutgers, right next to Queens.
Winans?
Winans, yeah. And then he met Dennis. There were 4, and Dennis was the fourth person he met, and he decided that that's where he wanted to put the money.
So that happened, I guess it used to be called the Rutgers Museum.
Yeah, I think it was, yeah.
And then in the 1970s,
Somewhere around
somewhere
there.
in the 1970s
Yeah.
or early 80s, then it was
Yeah.
named.
And then, of course, we were so fortunate that Norton Dodge came in and given us all this wonderful work. And if this ever becomes really valuable, it will be it's pretty valuable now,
Right.
but it could become out because it's in a period when Russia was going from the communism to more freedom.
And what impact do you think the museum has had? You know, your thoughts on the museum?
Oh, I don't know what impact my thoughts have had. If they could answer that better than I could. I think it's been a good thing for the university. I don't think there's any question about that. But what the actual impact? There are classes there, and that's just a difficult question for me to answer. I mean, I think it has had an impact, but I don't know. I can't qualify that.
And I would assume along with the redevelopment of New Brunswick, it certainly helped, went hand in hand to have people
right.
bring in visitors from
Yes.
outside as well.
Yeah.
Because if New Brunswick hadn't been as
Right.
redeveloped,
Oh,
wouldn't have been as
no.
an attractive a place to come.
No, that was sort of the on the other side of town. This side. No, but it worked out very well.
Since you were someone who knew New Brunswick over many years, can you tell us some of your thoughts of how the city had changed, from...
Oh yeah, I can. Really, when you look at the below George Street, I can remember, the Albany Theater down on the left, and all these sort of, what was that street, right along the river, going towards Johnson and Johnson. That was really
Right.
sort of just a slummy area, and that was just all cleared out, and it made a tremendous difference. There was a lumber yard down there, Zamo's lumber, and but that was you can't realize how bad that area was.
What about, there's an area where Allen apparently owned land over in the Hiram district?
Yeah, and
Do you remember
yeah, I
anything
remember.
about his
I'm trying to
owning
think what happened to that. I'd say my memory is not.
Well, they took down those really old, some of the really old buildings, but retained the Frog and the Peach and those buildings
Right.
that the restaurants are in. But apparently Allen, I hear this from people, but I don't know how much of it he owned. Apparently at one point Allen bought up a bunch of property
Oh, yeah,
in
he
that
did.
area.
He bought, I think, one street. Well, I can't remember the name of the street down there. Pretty much properties on both sides of the street, and then he just turned it over to whoever was doing the redevelopment.
So he didn't own it for a long time. He just facilitated.
I think he owned it. I think he owned it long enough for tax reasons.
Yeah.
That a year or more.
I see. Okay.
And then he, as I remember, I think he just gave it to the city.
I see. Wow.
Yeah, Alan was really very. Too bad you can't talk with him, but because he was just a very generous guy. He never learned how to read. But he just was a very bright man, and he went to Rensselaer and
At MIT, right?
MIT, and then he also took another course at Penn State. So despite his academic limitations, he was very bright in his own way.
He was dyslexic, right?
What?
He had dyslexia.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah.
But yet went through engineering
Right.
programs.
Well, he really never learned how to read. Well,
That's amazing.
and he was left back in the first grade because of his delinquencies in reading.
Since we're talking about how the city was changing, your memories of how retail used to be in New Brunswick and then where it was in this late 60s, early 1970s period?
They used to have a Wolfson store here on George Street, and I remember the State Theater was always there. The George Street Playhouse, what was that first thing? That was a gym of some sort.
Yeah, it was a YMCA.
Right.
Right.
And let's see. I was on the board of the Brunswick Savings for a while, and then they were taken over. I don't know.
So if we're, go ahead.
I was going to say, you originally actually went to high school in New Brunswick? I'm trying to
No,
remember. There wasn't
no.
a high school in Highland Park?
No, that my sister
Yeah.
was in the first graduating class, Highland Park. That was 1938.
Oh, okay.
And my brother and stepbrother, Fred Zimmerli, they were in the class of 41, and I was in the class of 44.
Oh, okay. So, but before that, people
It-
from
it-
Highland
it-
Park went to high
New-
school
went
in
to
New Brunswick.
That's right.
I see,
That
okay.
It took it over a 3-year period, 10th, 11th, and 12th. So, but I say my sister was in the first class
Right.
that graduated from Highland Park.
So then, when you were in Highland Park, I remember you talked about having a paper route and all that sort of thing. Did you come into New Brunswick frequently? There was a Arnold Constable and other stores.
We would, I'd go to the State Theater some, and
Which was the main movie theater in
the State was,
region.
right. And there were 2 other theaters. One was Albany, which was on the J&J property, and also the Rivoli, which was on George Street. It was right down here. That was I used to go there some, and there was also a small theater down along the river called the Strand.
Huh.
This is a movie theater.
Yes, movie theater. That wasn't. That didn't do very well.
So there were 4 movie theaters?
Yeah.
Wow.
And would people do most of their shopping in New Brunswick? I mean, if people living in Highland Park, would they come, besides coming
I
in to
think
see
so, yeah.
the movie theaters, they would do their
well,
shopping?
no, they did. I did all my clothing shopping at a store, Fixler's.
Fixler's?
Herb Fixler. He was right out down here on George Street. And I used to go to a dentist up here on Livingston Avenue, Dr. Brown. He was related to the Segoing family. That's going back a long ways.
So then eventually, people didn't come into New Brunswick to shop anymore before the redevelopment.
I guess I'm not sure about that. Not being retail, my business was in Newark,
Right.
And then Woodbridge, so I don't know much about shopping habits of
Okay.
people. But obviously, it was, I'd say the key was that J&J stayed in town.
So if we could continue with that thought, you mentioned J&J staying was key. The efforts by the museum were helpful,
Yeah,
you know, in terms
right.
of bringing people into the city and giving a different sense of what New Brunswick was. Other actions that you think were important?
Well, I think the key was, I mentioned earlier, J&J staying in town.
You mentioned the
Rutgers,
museum.
Rutgers under, if I haven't said this, my memory is not too good, Ed Blaustein was good. And who came after Ed?
Fran Lawrence.
Fran Lawrence. I didn't think he was too good.
Can you speak what you remember about Blaustein's involvement?
He was just very much involved with them. He was involved in things, and so I say I have some memory problems, so don't.
Ralph, another person who Barbara worked for was John Lynch.
Yes.
So, do you recall when he was mayor here?
Yes,
And
yeah.
what his involvement was?
Oh yeah, John was good. He was the mayor that was most involved in the redevelopment. He and John Heldridge had a very good relationship. And then of course it's too bad what's happened to him now. But if you want to talk about the redevelopment of New Brunswick, you have to talk about him and John Heldridge.
Did Barbara work for him?
Yes.
Related to his
Yeah.
mayoral work here in New Brunswick?
No, the Senate work.
Senate work,
He
okay.
was a Senate Majority Leader, and she was very, very fond of him, and I was always been so happy that she wasn't around when all this came about.
Right.
But he was a very, very bright man, probably too bright for his own good.
I think Pat Sheehan was the mayor in New
Yeah.
Brunswick, and what are your
Pat was
recollections about
wonderful.
her involvement?
Pardon?
Her involvement in the
Yeah, well,
redevelopment
she
of the city?
she was a wonderful mayor, delightful person, and didn't she go ahead in politics a little bit after?
I don't remember.
Didn't she run for the assembly or
Maybe
something
she
like
did.
that?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, she's a lovely, and she's living down the shore now, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And Betsy Garlotti is her daughter, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Your thoughts on how the cultural center contributed to you spoke about the museum, but now
Yeah.
you did mention George Street. How the cultural center
I think it's
contributed?
been very important. Crossroads has been a disappointment. That started out very well, and now it's not doing well. They just have a few shows. I guess maybe I'm being a little too harsh, but at the beginning they were really very good. What was the guy's name?
Ricardo Kahn?
Congress. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's back doing some things with it now.
But wasn't Eric Krebs one of the men?
Eric Krebs, he was George Street.
George Street,
Right.
Yeah, Eric was a dynamo.
So of course you had the State Theater in George Street and Crossroads.
Then George Street has always been strong. Who was the first director there? Who's there now? My memory on short. short term?
David
David Saint.
Saint.
Yeah,
Right.
and they're still very good. My son Alan is on the board there. Barbara was chairperson for a while of George Street, and that's really, that probably is as strong a cultural unit as almost anything in the state.
And the role of the hospital, you spoke briefly before about that.
Well,
Your thoughts
I think
on-
I think that the key was hooking up. I was chair when we decided to hook up with the medical school, and I think that that made the difference. I think Middlesex would have not made it on its own.
It was Middlesex Hospital.
It was Middlesex
I
General Hospital.
forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yes. See, you have a better memory than I do.
No, don't say that.
So you were the chair of the Middlesex Hospital Board?
I was the chair when we went from Middlesex to
To
Robert Wood.
Johnson.
Yeah.
Which I assume means Robert Wood Johnson Foundation gave money for that.
Yes.
Okay.
There's no question. They give money to.
And your recollections of that process? I mean, we had a local hospital, which was Middlesex Hospital,
Mhm.
and then you mentioned the link up with UMDNJ.
Yes.
Clearly, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation
Yes.
becoming involved
Right.
was very. Your
They-
recollection about that? You know, what was the thinking?
Well, they support both hospitals, but I think there is.
Both St. Peter's and
Right, but I think there's a little more generous support to Robert Wood, and there's always a member of the Robert Wood board, Robert Wood Foundation board on the hospital board. And I can't tell you who that is right now. You can check with my son-in-law.
Okay.
So,
Well, Steve Jones is the president of the hospital.
who's?
Steve Jones.
Yes, he started out, and the growth of that man is, the growth is just tremendous. He started out, I never thought he would be anything,
Really?
but he just continued to grow.
He teaches for us.
What?
He teaches for us.
Oh, he does?
Yeah, he teaches in our undergraduate public health program.
Oh, good, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
How's he doing there?
fine. He's been teaching for many years.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And then Barbara was on the hospital board,
Yes,
right?
yes,
And
she was.
was she instrumental in that new children's wing?
See, I think she was, but I'm a little vague on that. I
Okay.
really am.
So, what do you think were the major accomplishments of the redevelopment? If you had to think of what were some of the milestones?
Well, I think the first and most important was that J&J stayed in town. That would be, to me, far and away. If they had moved out, I think New Brunswick would have gone downhill. I think the hospitals have been important.
How about Route 18? I know that was...
I think having divided highway has helped. I don't know, it certainly is easy. I mean, that was 18, I don't know if you remember the 18, it was...
a lot of controversy.
Oh, yeah, it was just...
I don't remember that.
No, it was car back then, they were all congested, and so that certainly has helped people to get in and out of New Brunswick.
So I guess with the benefit of hindsight,
Pardon?
with the benefit of hindsight, it's always these, can you think of things that should have been done differently, or I realize that's an open-ended question. But
Oh, boy. I'd have to think about that. I really,
let me mention some things that some people have said or in the literature. I guess some discussion that the neighborhood groups were not as involved as they could have been, you know, especially the minority communities. Is that your perspective?
There's no question that was not the case. I don't know whether there's a black on.
I know Roy Epps was involved.
Well, Roy Epps is involved, but there was a Dave Harris.
Right.
Now, where is Dave now?
He's still around in New Brunswick. I think he's still on the Board of Trustees.
At Rutgers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know what he's doing.
No, I don't either.
So did he served on boards, or he was consulted, or?
I don't know. I don't know at this point. He might have been involved at St. Peter's. I don't think he was involved at Robert Wood.
Okay. Did you know much about the housing issues when they were taking down buildings and moving people?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't know much about that. I was aware of it, but I didn't
Right.
know much about it.
Kenneth Wheeler told us about his interest in preserving some of the older buildings, and that DevCo was planning on taking down a lot more, but for instance in the block where Pilmer Square is, that he was able to get them to retain the building that Old Bay is in and some of those other, and I guess along, I don't know the name of the street, is it Hiram Street, where the Frog and the Peach is?
Yeah.
Do you recall any of the
No, I really
controversy
don't know.
over that?
No, I don't.
How much of what happened here do you think is transferable to other urban areas?
Oh, I think it's, I think you need a corporate leader in most cases, or a very strong, or, you know, a very strong person. But I really think probably in most cases, well, in Princeton, for example, they're not a corporate leader, but there's certainly wealth, and I don't think that ever really deteriorated. Do you?
No, I guess there was a whole section that was redeveloped, Palmer
Yeah.
Square. And some people feel like they lost some things by doing that, but it's become a fairly popular
Yeah, there was a black area in
Yes.
Princeton going towards Lawrenceville, and I don't know how what that is like today. I don't know.
There's a lot of South Latin Americans who live there.
There are.
But that was the neighborhood that Paul Robeson grew up in.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
And, which is a story. I mean, your grandfather, was it, who
What?
got Paul Robeson?
oh, no,
in-
my father.
Your father.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
It's an interesting story.
Yeah. My father, Paul Robeson, became very good friends, and in fact, we've had his son out to our church.
Right.
Yeah, and so I'm good friends with it, and they're all same. They've all black guys that married white gals, and Paul, the son is a very good guy. He went to Cornell, and he was a good football player, but it was, to be Paul Robeson's son, it's pretty tough. But he's a good guy, and he's been out. I told you, out to our church to speak. And
But now, Paul Robeson, your father, was he instrumental in getting Paul Robeson to come to Rutgers when he was not allowed into Princeton?
I think so, Theo, my memory on things like that. No, my dad was definitely involved in it.
Right.
How much he was involved in it, I don't know.
And Robeson's father, I believe, was a minister at
Yes,
Princeton.
yes.
Right? Yeah.
No question about that.
Right.
And
So we started to talk about how transferable
Right.
what happened here is to other places. And you mentioned Princeton, and of course Princeton is a very different type of
Yeah,
community. So let's say to a Perth Amboy, to another urban area, do you think what happened here could be transferred to a place?
I think there was certainly some transfer. A good friend I had was very much involved with. His name was Ernie Hansen, and he was head of Perth Amboy Savings, and he was very, very good. He and John Heldridge, I know, used to meet now and then to talk about. But if you're looking at the history of Perth Amboy, well, he is certainly a good person.
So I guess just reflecting some of your comments, the ingredients that could be exported, so to speak, would be you need the corporate commitment.
Yeah, I think you do. Yeah, I think very few people have the amount of money. And as I said, I can't. Are you going to talk with some people in Perth Amboy?
Not directly, but it's just more your thoughts on what is, I just used Perth Amboy as an example of an urban area.
But to me, I don't know enough about. I'm trying to think who the mayor in Perth Amboy was at that time. But Ernie was certainly a very, very key guy in helping Perth Amboy at that time. I think probably, as I mentioned before, that you might want to talk to some people from Perth Amboy to see the differences between how they turned around and New Brunswick.
And again, reflecting some of your comments, the corporate commitment, important. I guess the role of the hospital.
Yeah, hospital, right. Very important. And
the
actually, I don't know enough about St. Peter's to tell you about that.
The cultural facilities,
yeah,
the museum, the cultural center.
It's really been, when I think what Albany Street used to look like and how it looks today. The only building that is there.
Actually, can we hear more about your thoughts about that, sort of Albany Street, the way it used to be?
Albany Street was you had the Albany Theater, and there were as you came across from Highland Park, there was this lumber yard, which I mentioned before, and then it was just, I can't recall exactly what was but it was pretty junky, and then there was the Albany Theater, and there was also on the upper part of Albany Street, a Sears and Roebuck that was there, and but I can't recall any other stores. And then you went across there was a Rivoli Theater, and then there was there's an eating place down here in New Brunswick that was when I used to get off the train, I'd come down the rear steps and I'd go to this place, and now it's down here in
Two Maltese.
What?
Two Maltese,
yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
So do you think it looks better now?
New Brunswick?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, it's been
I remember, by the way, Hockey's. It was a restaurant.
Yeah, the name.
Across,
where was it?
across from J&J. I think it was on Albany Street.
Geez, I don't remember that. I mean, I remember the name, but I don't remember.
Now, you actually live in a building that's the result of the redevelopment in the health.
Where I live now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever think 25 years ago that you would move to downtown New Brunswick?
No, it didn't, and glad we did. And it's good. I got a great spot. I am on the corner.
Right.
I can imagine what some of the attractions are, but can you talk a little bit about, again, you said you were glad you did.
Beg your pardon?
You're glad you did, that you bought a unit.
Yeah.
Can you just tell us some of your thoughts about what you like, living?
Well, it's convenient for me. Summertime, or sometimes I still walk to my church in Highland Park.
Really, you walk all the way?
I don't do it all the time, but
Okay.
I do it. And I have my friend here. I have an exercise machine. I get off on Saturday, on Sunday. She gives me the day off on Sunday.
But then you walk to church.
No, but
Every morning
it's been
we
good.
bike in 5 miles.
Wow.
In his apartment, yeah.
Wow.
It is today.
But Sunday off.
And do you take advantage of the cultural
Oh,
activities
yeah.
across
I
the
go to, I have season tickets to George Street, Crossroads. What's going to happen there? Who knows? They say they're going to be back. I hope they are, but then say George Street and the State Theater. I go to all the symphonies and other things. They're very nice. The gal comes over and she goes over the whole. Not just the other day, she came over to check off the things that I'm going to next year.
Oh, good.
Yeah. What is her name?
Linda.
Linda. Linda, yeah. She's a great kid. You know her?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's really
Okay.
so somebody,
Really nice.
you know.
Do you
might-
visit the museum?
Pardon?
The Zimmerli
Zimmerli.
Museum.
Do you
Yeah.
visit the Zimmerli
Oh,
Museum?
yeah, I go in there. I don't know, whenever I feel like going in.
They have a new
Board
director.
For the board meetings all the time.
Board meeting
Yeah.
of the Zimmerli?
Yeah, he goes all the
Yeah,
time.
right.
And we forgot probably, I'm sorry, for Douglas or something. He supports Douglas too.
Oh, yes, right,
Douglas.
right.
Yeah.
And New Brunswick Arts also.
So this is a totally off-the-wall question, but what would happen if New Brunswick had a sports facility downtown? You always go to the basketball games. What if there were a downtown arena?
Well, I think it would be successful. There was talk about that.
I know.
And then I don't know what
The
happened.
new
to it.
athletic director's talking about it again.
He is? Huh. I don't know.
You could get to it by train, but I mean, you could walk to it.
Yeah.
Right.
I would, I think would be successful, but I don't, the new one's talking about it.
It was mentioned among several possibilities.
Well, I just wonder why they would do that right now with what they had over on the other side.
It might be way in the future, I don't know.
I don't know.
Do you think that downtown needs a bigger and more modern supermarket?
I don't do the shopping. So I'll escape that one.
Right.
Yeah. And they're at, well, where do you shop? You go back to Highland Park?
Sometimes Highland Park, sometimes here sit down.
Seatown?
Yeah, it is nice to come comfortable to walk
Yeah,
there.
well, it's easy.
Easy,
for you,
yeah.
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 Which one did you say?
Sit down. On
Seatown,
the other side
Oh.
of 7-Eleven.
right, right.
Yeah.
But you served on boards of almost every
Everywhere here.
Every
on boats.
entity.
Yeah.
Everywhere on boats.
With the Zimmerli, the hospital, the
With the New
State
Brunswick
Theater.
Cultural Center.
New
State
Brunswick
Theater,
Cultural
George
Center.
Street, Douglas,
Right.
everywhere.
No, I have been on George Street,
George Street is Allen.
Allen, and
Right.
Barbara.
Barbara was involved in that.
They honor you last year.
And you've been on the Board of Trustees of Rutgers.
Yes,
Right.
yeah.
Do you have
Today
any
he goes there.
papers or
every
records
day.
that we could look at that might pertain to these different?
I don't know whether, I'll look. Let me, what kind of paper, just,
Well,
Board meetings?
just documents that have some relationship to the redevelopment of the
all
city.
right. You've talked to John, haven't you?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's the one that really
Yeah,
has the
we
papers
will-
on that.
We will pursue by looking at documents that he has. but-
Yeah, well, no, I'll look. Well, let me put it that way.
I mentioned earlier that we're looking at documents in the New Brunswick Library and in the archives from the Rutgers Library.
Yeah.
Any other places you would recommend that you think may have some documents relating to the redevelopment of the city?
No, I wouldn't think so.
And I know you mentioned a number of people that we should talk to. And I know Thea's good on keeping a list, and we have it on the video, but any people who have not been mentioned that you think are, again, you've mentioned quite a few people, so
Just tell me the ones I mentioned, and,
Sellers,
what?
Richard Sellers,
Yeah.
of course, Haldred.
Jim Burke?
Jim Burke. I don't know if I guess he is still alive,
Yes,
right?
he is. He lives in New York.
John Lynch.
John Lynch,
Pat Sheehan.
Pat Sheehan, Dick Chalmers.
Did you ever meet Leo Molinari?
I met him.
He was the guy from American Cities,
Yes.
a planning firm.
Right. I don't know him well.
Okay.
I've met him, but I don't know him.
Was Ginny Record involved?
Some, but not tremendously.
Bill Wright, we're gonna
Bill,
try to get in touch
right.
with. Right.
Yeah.
How about, it was suggested we talk to Eric Krebs.
Oh, yeah, he's a guy that, he's a key person. If, whatever is going on in the arts in New Brunswick,
Mm-hmm.
he's the guy that started it. No, you should talk with him. He still lives in Highland Park,
Yep.
and,
Works in New York.
What?
Yeah. He has producing shows in New York
Yes.
now.
In New York.
Yeah.
right.
On
But
weekends they
he-
coming home.
Are there any original restaurant owners?
I don't know.
Somebody mentioned the person who owns the Frog and the Peach, but I don't.
I really don't know.
The Tumulties people might.
Beg your
The
pardon?
people who have Tumulties may be the same ones. I
Yeah.
don't know.
That used to be up near the railroad.
Where J&J is, right?
I used to stop in there a lot, but now I don't do it very much.
Okay.
It's a good place, though. Good. Have you eaten there?
Tumulties?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you used to commute by train, right? When
Yeah.
you were in Metro Park?
Metro Park, and I also commuted to Newark.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Then we moved, when Newark was going through that crazy decline, we moved it out to Metro Park.
Metro Park. It was Paine Weber.
Pardon?
When it was still Paine Weber.
Yeah.
Before it
Right.
became UBS.
Now it's UBS. God, you're pretty
Yeah,
sharp.
no,
Oh, boy,
we're gonna
I tell
we're
you.
gonna
She
interview,
remembers all that stuff.
Thea. You started to speak some about growing up in your family, and that's all part of an important story. You want to,
Well, I
tell us,
see my dad.
tell us a little more about that. I mean,
My dad died when I was 3, and so I have just a very vague recollection of him. And then my mother married Adolf Zimmerli, who was a Swiss, and so So that was about, I think there was about 6 years between the death of my father and mother, and I was very upset with her when she married. But he was a good stepfather, and so.
And you grew up in Highland Park, right?
Yeah, I was in Highland Park, and John, whenever I came over here, how long? Just a few years I came over here.
Right?
Yeah.
3 years ago.
I was on the council in Highland Park for a while, and through 6 years, then I was Democratic chairman for a while, and
Actually, if we could just go back more to the beginning, like, you were educated to go into what
Well,
profession, or just tell us a little bit
I
about that.
I was going to be a teacher, and then after I went to business school at NYU, and after that I started out in the brokerage business. No, I'm sorry. I first worked at 2 prep schools. I worked at the Petty School, assistant business manager, same at Lawrenceville, and then I was so lucky I got out of that because I so disagree with that whole prep school stuff.
Right.
That was really one of my worst mistakes in my life, working at those 2 prep schools. Then I got in the brokerage business, which again, maybe it's serving wealthy people, but I've always been involved in local stuff in my church, and on the borough council for a while, and involved with Rutgers. All right, you gonna send me home?
Where?
Unless there's anything else you want to say about New Brunswick.
Any thoughts about anything you
Well,
want to say?
there was something else actually, going back to your past. You and John Heldrick were very good friends
Yeah.
when you were growing up, right?
Growing up, yeah. And he was similar in that his father died when I think he was. Have I said this before?
No, about John, no.
Not about John.
When he was about 6 months
Wow.
old, and my father died when I was 3 years old. And difference is his mother didn't marry again, and my mom did. But we've been close friends for all these years. It's been a wonderful relationship.
So did you go to school together?
Yes, we
You met him in-
we're in the same class.
Oh, in elementary school.
Elementary school and Highland Park High School.
I see.
Right. We graduated.
Kindergarten too.
What?
Kindergarten.
What?
I don't know if they had kindergarten then.
Not preschool, kindergarten?
Oh yeah, we had
Yeah, they
kindergarten.
were.
You did?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yes.
School had that. Sure.
Yesterday we were there.
Oh, okay.
We were teasing each other with girlfriends.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, and then I think at one time you both had a paper route
Yes.
you talked about?
Yeah, he had a paper route from 2nd Avenue going towards Edison. I was 2nd Avenue down towards River Road.
You divided the town.
Yeah, we divided the town.
And John said he always had to give his money back to his mother.
Oh yeah, John was very, very good to his
Uh-huh.
to his mother, and no, he's been a very generous and a close friend, and no, he's very, very, very generous, and of course he made a little money too. So, but you know, a lot of people who made a lot of money don't give as John has given.
Mhm.
And any other people you grew up with who were involved in New Brunswick's redevelopment?
Let's see. someplace else or have died. I can't think of anybody.
John mentioned some bankers, some of the people, when the banks were still local banks, a lot of the heads of those banks were local people.
Yeah, there was a
Were they
guy at the People's Bank was a good guy. Oh boy. People's Bank, New Brunswick Trust Company was Lester Mott. That's right down here on George Street.
I think there were like 5 or 6 banks.
What?
I think they mentioned there were like 5 or 6 New Brunswick banks.
Yeah, People's Holmes Dennis. Holmes Dennis was the head of People's Bank.
Do you know whether they're still alive, Lester
No, I
Mart
think,
and Holmes Dennis?
I think they're dead.
But they lived in New Brunswick, not Highland Park.
Holmes Dennis. No, they didn't live in Highland Park. Bill Kuthel, I think, lived in Milltown in that area. Ed Beyer. Did I mention him?
Mm-mm.
Oh, well, I should have mentioned him. He was on the board of the Savings Bank. And he lived in Highland Park. He lived in, that sort of new area down off Lincoln Avenue, off to the right.
Yeah.
Forget the name of that street. But in fact, he was the one that first put me on a board.
Oh, okay.
Ed Beyer.
And he was with People Saving?
No, he was New Brunswick Savings.
Oh, New Brunswick Savings. What about Norman Reitman? Was he involved in
good.
anything in New Brunswick? Was he with the hospital?
He was at the hospital, and
Okay.
he was at both hospitals, but spent more time at Robert Wood, and he's amazing.
Yeah.
Whew. Have you met him? No, you're going to talk with him.
He's
aren't
in
you?
his 90s. Well, we should, I guess, right?
Oh, yeah.
Norman Reitman?
96, 97.
Right.
Something like that.
He still gets around with that cane, right?
Yeah, he just...
Yeah, but he's everywhere.
Right.
We were with him the other day
Memory.
at Rutgers at a
No
meeting.
problem.
So he was a physician he had his own practice?
He had his own practice.
Plus
and
he was-
had it on River Road.
Okay.
And we were with him at a Rutgers meeting the other night. So, 96, 97. You really should talk with him. He's just a phenomenal individual. I wish I had his memory.
And he lived in Highland Park?
Yeah, he lived
Did
in
he
Har-
grow up in Highland Park?
That I don't know.
Okay.
That I don't know. He lived on Harrison Avenue, right on the border of Edison,
Right.
but in Highland Park.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So people growing up in Highland Park at the time viewed New Brunswick as like the city, and they were just a suburb of New Brunswick. I mean, was that a fair statement?
Yeah, we were certainly, much smaller.
But you felt more connected to New Brunswick. Right?
We were
Connected.
a lot of us were, and but we all went to our. Like John still goes to St. Paul's Church. I go to the Dutch Reform, where Thea used to go. She left us.
Right.
And we have this young couple that are just amazing. They say that this is the way it's going to be in the Protestant churches, that there'll be a husband and wife. It really makes sense. You don't have to preach every week. Yeah.
Did the churches ever think of moving out of New Brunswick as their congregants?
Well, no, the Episcopal Church. Now we've taken that over. I don't know what we're going to do with it.
Which Episcopal?
Episcopal Church on South Side on,
Oh, in Highland Park.
right.
Uh-huh.
There's a Methodist church. I don't know how they're doing.
But the churches in New Brunswick pretty much stayed in New Brunswick, right?
Yes, yeah.
The Second Reformed stayed there.
The Second Reformed, First Reformed is down here, and Second
Right.
Reformed is up on College Avenue.
Right.
I don't know how they're doing.
Mhm.
I don't think that well, but I think they both have good endowments.
I see.
So, and Christ Church has the best endowment because General Johnson left them a lot of money.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
Huh.
But what I'm hearing is that the churches that were in New Brunswick pretty much stayed in New Brunswick.
Yes.
It's not like they
Yeah.
moved out.
Yeah.
So in part, people living in Highland Park who belong to the New Brunswick churches, so that was yet another tie.
Well, then give me that
It
again.
was another connection to New Brunswick. They not only came to the movie theaters here, and
Yeah.
some of them
Right.
worked here, they also went to services,
Right.
religious
Yeah.
services here.
There's that very old Jewish synagogue too. I think it's conservative down by the Hiram district.
No, which one are you talking about?
I don't know the name of it.
Well, but
It's
tell me
on-
where it is.
It's on Nielsen Street. It's on Nielsen Street.
Is that near?
It's across from the Wolton parking deck. People walk to it.
There were like 4 synagogues in that area, and 3 left, and that one remained.
I see, okay.
I don't remember.
I see people walk to it from Highland Park.
My memory on that is not too good.
Okay. Again, if there are any other thoughts on the
No.
redevelopment, and if not, we'll
No, I think
thank you.
it's great what you're doing here.
Thank you.
I think it really is.
And if you find any documents, I mean, I don't know when he moved. About New Brunswick, or any, when he was on the boards of places and they talked about New Brunswick redevelopment. When he left his other house, I guess Jane did a
We
lot
have
of work.
plenty of old newspapers he keeps.
Oh, yeah?
Probably, yeah.
I'll look
Yeah,
through that.
we go through
Okay.
that and find something.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you think the home news covered the redevelopment?
I don't read the home news anymore. I used to deliver the paper, and I don't know. I still read the.
You read the ledger?
John and
I read the
Sophie.
New York Times. I read the New York Times.
Mhm.
And I
Okay.
used to read the Tribune, and they went out of business.
Right.
Yeah. So, and.
They're all gonna go out of business soon.
What?
They're all gonna go out
Oh,
of
yeah,
business
it's a tough,
soon.
it's a tough
New York Times,
environment.
$2 became.
Yeah,
New York Times.
yeah.
$2 a day,
Yeah.
$2, right. So,
But it is always sold. At 10 o'clock, it's done.
Yeah,
Sold out.
right.
If I can ask, since you're living in a building across the street, like, who are you? Who are your neighbors? Like, who else bought in? I don't know if you have an occasion to see them, or?
who's that person, Miss George DeVoe's widow lives there.
Who, George?
Edith DeVoe.
Edith,
Oh.
yes.
Yeah,
The
she.
11th floor.
She
Yeah.
used to live, I'm thinking, on South Adelaide, off that, one of those streets.
Oh, yeah.
Alice's mother. Alice DeVoe, lawyer.
Alice.
Alice
yeah.
DeVoe.
Oh, I know
Lawyer.
Alice
They're
DeVoe.
lawyer, and
Right.
Yes.
her mother lives
And,
on the next
I
floor.
think she'd be somebody that you might want to talk with.
What's her name? Edith DeVoe?
Edith DeVoe, on the 11th floor.
Okay.
Alice's mom.
And what was her connection to?
Well, just they lived in Highland Park
Oh.
a long while, and they were
They-
one of
they-
they were one of the few Republicans.
Along with John.
John, yeah. So, but I think she.
But her daughter Alice is a lawyer in New Brunswick?
In Brunswick,
Yes,
right.
she works nearby here, 2 blocks.
Right. I guess Tom Kelso is another person maybe we should
Yeah.
talk to, right?
Tom is, Tom knows a lot of people, a lot of things around in Brunswick.
And was he a lawyer for the city or the county? I
Yeah,
can't
he was
remember.
lawyer for the county, I
For
think.
the county,
Yeah.
okay. Do you know him, David?
No, you ought to talk.
And he
to
was
him.
on the State Theater Board.
Yes.
And he was one of the people at the very beginning when it first got renovated,
right.
who was involved in that. And the county giving money for that.
There's a plaque in the State Theater.
Right.
And I think there are 5 or 6 names on that. And I think it'd be good to talk to all of them.
Oh, okay.
Since we just mentioned the county, Middlesex County, how did Middlesex County government, what was their role in the redevelopment?
I don't know. I don't know. So, no, again, Tom Kelso could
Yeah.
help you on that one.
Going back to your neighbors, I read an article about the people who live on the very top, right above you.
Yeah.
I think he's a restaurant owner. Trying to remember the name of it, Trey Piani near Princeton.
Husband and wife,
Right.
Yeah, and advertising their picture. I think,
Right.
yes.
Right. She has blonde hair.
Yeah.
Right.
What's the name?
Can't remember their name.
I don't know, but.
But they said they wanted to live in an urban setting, but he works closer to Princeton, so they got this space up on the
They
very
got the top
Yeah.
Right,
drawer.
right.
And you support program, Who is My Neighbor in Highland Park. Barbara established the program, Who is My Neighbor.
Oh, who is my neighbor?
He supports this program.
Oh, is that really? I know that the
Financial
2 ministers have
Yeah,
that.
Right.
And he supports.
Oh, yes,
So,
I've
who's
given
my
money
neighbor?
to that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good program.
That's great. Okay,
All right.
Thank you, thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah. I hope we.
someday when this gets published in some form, we'll let you know and give you a copy.
Well, I hope I'm around by that time. So,
Let's see.
that's it.
turn
Well,
this
you
off.
wearing glasses? This
Reading
new?
glasses.
What?
Reading glasses. I wear contact lenses, but I can't read well with them. I know.
See,
I've never seen her
You
glasses
see,
before.
my problem is I have reading glasses, but I always lose them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I usually do too.
I know, I should.
Yes.
Well, listen, I'm blind in one eye, so. But I've been lucky, you know. My parents were really wonderful. They didn't let me play football in high school. But
They were worried you would
Yeah,
get
they
hurt.
worried, but they let me play at Rutgers. And so, anyway.
You still have season tickets to football
Oh,
at
yeah,
Rutgers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And basketball.
Basketball.
football,
Women basketball.
and men.
So,
And men,
They're the
wow.
better team.
The women are a lot, I think the women should, I think
Not better.
Vivian Stringer should be coach for the men's and the women's.
no, she's an amazing person.
Yes.
Yeah.
She really is.